and noticing it for yourself and for other people that you care about, you need to acknowledge that there's something going on here, and I'm concerned about it. And people who go into the extreme piece often don't want to hear you say anything. That there is denial, there is clutter blindness. But if you're at a point where it's not that severe yet, but you find yourself getting irritated because there's too much stuff on your counter, your kid can't find their backpack for school, your spouse says, hey, I'd like to have someone over for dinner, and you look around and think, no way. So it's recognizing you're at a place where there's an issue. And I see a lot of times there is some kind of depression issue happening, or some lack of motivation. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It means your brain is not functioning the way it ought to be. And so even getting up to shower or put on makeup or get to work or do some of those things translates into not being able to clean your house or pick up, or and things just kind of fall into disarray. And if you notice that when that's happening and say, okay, I don't want to go any further down this road, so what can I do to not do that? And like you mentioned, it starts small. It's pick a basket, it's sort it out, it's deciding all that laundry will be put in the laundry baskets, and teaching your kids, you know what, Susie and Johnny, you need to put your clothes in these baskets and then we'll go wash them. It's, in a way, finding systems that help you not get overwhelmed. And you kind of have to figure out what that is for you and your family.
And you mentioned manfaji, so I saw about the Japanese technique of how they get rid of clutter. Are you familiar with it?
Yes. Are you speaking of the Marie Kondo, where if it sparks joy, you should keep it? And sometimes you might have too much joy, and that's why you have too much stuff. But there is something to be said about that. Whereas if you look at a piece of, say you look at a painting or a picture and you have really good memories of that, and you're really connected to that in a positive way, and then maybe you look at another painting that doesn't bring up those good things for you, then maybe that's the one you should release and get rid of, so that you're creating a positive vibe in your environment, and you're, every time you look at something that brings up something negative, you're basically reliving that negative event or that trauma. And that is hard to work through if you have a lot of things in your space that are bringing up really negative memories for
you. Yeah, you have to get rid of the trauma. Because trauma over trauma, it just becomes too much trauma.
And it just grows. If you don't handle it, it's kind of like grief, where it accumulates. And if you don't handle this piece of grief, then the next time some kind of grief comes to you, you're dealing with double, instead of, I've processed this other. I experienced it with my brother, who he died many years ago, but later I had an uncle that passed away, and I realized 15 years later that I hadn't really entirely processed this grief over here. And so I was kind of dealing with, I lost a brother and an uncle, and how do I process that? And that grief and trauma is what people want to avoid sometimes, and that can trigger that hoarding response to bring more and more things to you to protect yourself from more loss.
Yeah, you have to deal with the situation. Sometimes avoidance is not the right response.
And the thing is a decision, no decision is still a decision. And choosing to not deal with it is a response. You're deciding, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to address it. And if you stuff it down, it's going to come out in some way. Somewhere it's going to show up in your life.
It usually comes out as anger.
Anger, yes. And maybe you're misdirecting it to someone who is not deserving of that anger.
So finding the root and dealing with it is the right choice.
It is. It really is. If you're trying to get to some next level in your life, or connect with people, or find your next path, sometimes you've really got to dig out whatever has gotten you to the spot you're in, and then say, okay, now that I'm dealing with this, how you're creating a vacuum though. So you also need to be putting something positive in there. You need to take, I find a lot of self-worth issues come up where you don't feel like you're valuable. And so if you're not valuable and worthy, then why would you live in a clean house? Why would you charge X amount for the services you provide as a business owner if you're not worthy? So you have to start looking at, what are you saying to yourself? And if you're saying I'm stupid, then you need to start saying something like I'm wise, or I'm smart, or I made a good decision. You spend the most time with yourself. So you have to figure out, how can you be kind to yourself, you know?
I see control. So gets out of control. That's
So
very
hi-
true what you say. Because there's a lot of negativity in the world. There's a lot of people that always find fault. You know, they make their point.
The criticism can really get you, yes.
And it can really chip away your self-esteem. So you have to build it every single day. You have to believe in yourself.
Mhm.
You know, and sometimes you have to lie to yourself until you believe in yourself. That's fine.
You have to alter it. It's like, that's why, I mean, I felt like I grew up feeling like I was stupid. I was less than. And because I struggled with math, but I was really good in other subjects. And I went into even the military saying, I will not fail. And over time, it became, well, every time you say that, the last word is fail. So you need to figure out, what could you say? And it became, I will succeed. And that was, the mindset piece is huge. And believing in yourself is kind of that first step to creating something different.
And that's true, right? It's just changing that word. That it might be just that. Just changing that keyword for something else. You know, from obstacle to challenge. What do you do with challenge? You overcome them. What you do with obstacles, they stop you.
Right.
So you always look at things as a challenge, not an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And it's in the, what you say to yourself and what you say to other people is what you're creating, you know? And well, just today we were talking about eagles, and within a couple of minutes an eagle flew over. Now I would have liked it to have been closer,
Yes, take that picture.
but it was like, whoa, there's an eagle. Like, you start to see the things you say come to life. And that's why I feel like you have to be so careful what you say to yourself and to the people around you, because you're basically speaking your reality into existence. And if you are very negative to yourself, it makes me want to give you a hug. Like, stop being, stop beating yourself up. Enough of the people in the world, enough scenarios in the world can do that for you. Like, don't go down that path. It's so hard to shift it if you don't recognize it.
Especially you're responsible for kids. I go back to that. What are you teaching your kids if you're not caring about yourself?
And you're teaching them that they're not valuable. Like, they see you think you're not valuable, and so they say, well, if my mom doesn't matter, then maybe I don't either. And you don't establish good boundaries, or you don't like, self-care is a huge piece of it. I mean, something as simple as a shower on a regular basis is, you know, very valuable. And
First sign of depression, right?
right, is that self-care drops off.
So Yeah, we definitely need to watch those symptoms. And you also mentioned the Swedish technique.
Well, there's something called like Swedish death cleaning, and it's basically reducing your stuff now. You're choosing who gets it and when, and it does kind of lean toward minimalism, but if your concern is control over your things, this you're still in control, and this allows you to keep what you want, give away what you want. Maybe you're donating it. Maybe you're giving it to a thrift shop. Maybe you're donating it to someone who could use that craft supplies that you've never gotten around to. I know about that. But it's a matter of taking control now and not waiting to gift your family a bunch of stuff they don't need either. So, another piece we talked about how much money you spend to acquire these things, and then later you may end up giving it all away. So, being mindful of what you're buying in the first place, is something as well. But I have talked with many clients, and a lot of times they don't want to deal with the issue at hand, and it doesn't have to be hoarding. It can be just, hey, I'm getting my house ready to sell, and I've done my whole house except this room, and this room is hard because it's the military flag, the divorce decree, the baby shoes, whatever. And so sometimes it's really helpful to have that emotional sounding board as you sort through your things. And you're still at a point where you're in control of what's happening. And if control is an issue, which it often is with extreme clutter anyway, you are having the opportunity to retain control and give away your stuff. And I'll add, once you give it to someone else, it's now theirs.
Yeah.
You don't get to tell them what to do with it anymore. And that is something that's you're giving up control once you give that item away. And I think it's valuable to recognize that it's not yours to worry about.
Yeah. And like you mentioned the housing.
See, so many layers.
So many layers, right? If you're ready to sell a housing, and I speak as a real estate professional, you have to stage the house. You're not selling your house, you're selling a house to somebody that wants to see themselves for it. So it's kind of hard when you have clutter.
Definitely.
You cannot take pictures. And then when you have to move from one house to another, all that clutter, it becomes weight that you have to pay for.
Right.
So, that's definitely an issue. If somebody pass away and all that clutter, what do you do with it? Maybe the clutter wasn't yours. Maybe it was a relative. That is hard because you're dealing with a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to clean up the mess. That you might not want to do that. So who do you talk to?
Well, and that part is so hard. Grief is already difficult, and you're dealing with that loss. I mean, it could have been a distant relative, it could have been your parent, and so now you're dealing with your grief piece, and now you're looking at this mess that was left. And some people choose to go in and clean it. You don't always have extreme squalor. Sometimes it's just a lot of stuff, and you may not have pests and things, but other times it could be very severe. And a lot of times people will say start with obvious trash, which is very valid sometimes if someone has lived there a long time and has not had any check-ins type of thing. So some people choose to get a dumpster and get their Tyvek suit and their N95 mask and go in and start cleaning. Other times you may just want to hire someone to come in and pull everything out. Very few companies that I know of will actually come in and buy the home and deal with the stuff and make sure that you get the sentimental items you think are there, and then but they basically take care of that whole scenario, which can be valuable if you live at a distance and really don't have time, patience, resources to deal with it. Other times, I mean, you technically don't have to deal with it. You can technically tell the landlord, hey, sorry, but, my name's not on the lease. It's not my issue. But most of the time, if we are involved with that person, we feel like we have an obligation to deal with it. And so if you choose to do that, make sure you're using personal protective equipment. Make sure you're taking breaks. Make sure your self-care is in a good space, so that you don't lose your mind.
Maybe maybe it's not a situation where you're dealing with probate, right? It's your property, but you have to clean it, and you have to pay before you can even get it,
Right.
and you can find anything. Make
That's
it
true.
hard.
And that whole probate piece, or the fact that you might have an elderly person in your life that you're really worried about, and you have specific groups that you call or whatever, and they basically have no authority over that situation. So now say your loved one's in a long-term care facility. Now you're having to come and still deal with that house. You're still having to deal with the fact that you can't sell it as is. Like you mentioned with all the clutter, how do you take pictures of that? How do you sell something that has all that in it? And honestly, sometimes you have to take it down to the studs anyway. Even if you clear it all out, you still might have a smell. You still might have rotten boards. You still might have serious issues that have to be dealt with that you don't even know exist until you cleared out the stuff.
And I would say that if you have two of everything, you already have a problem. If you have more than that, it's even worse.
I have about 8 pairs of scissors.
At least scissors are small. I think custom. But yes.
But right, like how many crock pots do you need? How many pitchers do you need? Like how many vases? I have a vase issue. I probably have 10. But I mean, that's a very, very valid point. What do you need versus what do you want to have because it's pretty or would fill a gap, or focusing on what do you actually need. And if you're downsizing to smaller spaces, it really forces you to take a closer look at what do you have and how many do you need. Or if you're consolidating houses, which I've seen that too. If you get married, or if you are moving in with someone, or like say you're having a parent move with you, or you're moving with them, like how much of this stuff do you actually need in that space, and really evaluating, do you need 5 crock pots? How often do you use the one that you have? Or even like towels, or pots and pans in your kitchen, or Tupperware stuff, plastic containers. How many do you need? How many mismatched lids do you have?
For the repair parts in case the pot breaks.
That too. Like, do you have a spare fridge or dryer, or and are you keeping it because something it might break? And that becomes more of a fear issue.
Yeah. You have to run to Home Depot because you cannot find the screwdriver, and then you buy another one. And now you have 2 or 3 or 4.
Yes. And that's why people buy multiples sometimes, is because it's too cluttered. You can't find the original thing you had in the first place. So now you are running out to find the next thing.
So that's some of the questions that they should be asking themselves is, how many scenes do we have? How many are actually giving us joy, or bringing good memories, of what we actually need? How much money it costs us?
Right. How much money do I want to spend to move these extra things that I don't really need? And how much money are you losing if you just give everything away, or a lot of things away, when you're moving, or when you're, so you are spending a lot of your resources on these things that may or may not be valuable.
Storage is going to cost you money.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put in storage away and you don't put in air conditioner, they might get damaged. So you pay storage and they might get damaged. It's kind of hard to store anything in storage or find anything. you forget that bill, guess what? They're going to sell all your stuff.
You're going to lose it anyway. And sometimes people have multiple storage units to the point that they're paying $800 a month for that, but they can't afford decent rent somewhere because they're paying on storage units instead. And they don't deal with the stuff. They don't want to detach from it. And a lot of it, that story is very accurate. Where you aren't paying your storage fees, they will sell it.
Yeah,
They're basically renting space for your stuff. That's all you're doing. They don't care about your stuff as much as you do.
So, yeah. Well, definitely, so that sounds like a question I should be asking.
Yes, definitely. And really, is it causing friction in your relationships? And really looking at what is your role in there, because it takes two, and if
3 or 4,
or 3 or 4 or 10. I mean, I know people that have lots of kids, and the only way they managed everything was to have some very solid systems in place to maintain their home, but also teach their kids. So really evaluating, do you need this thing or want it, or you already have plenty of it? And don't be afraid to ask for help. You might need to decide who you allow in your space, what friend or what relative or what neighbor gets you, understands you, isn't going to make super critical need things. Like, you don't need that when you're trying to deal with this, but it can also be very valuable to have someone that you do trust and know that will help you sort through it. And sometimes you need someone that's very not emotionally attached. You need a professional organizer. You need a real estate agent to come in and say, hey Joe, we're listing your house. These are the things that need to happen so we can have a good photo shoot so you can get top dollar. And you just sometimes need an objective perspective.
If you're going to do it yourself, hire somebody that can.
Yes.
As long as you can afford it, go ahead. Hello, amazing viewers. Your support is invaluable. Your like, shares, and engagement have turned the channel into a vibrant community, and we're deeply grateful. Thank you. If you have been enjoying our content and want to see more, there's a simple way to support us. Hit that big red subscribe button below this video. Subscribing not only keeps you updated on our latest release, but also show your appreciation for what we do. And some exciting news, our next promo, it reveals fantastic products we have crafted with you in mind. From exclusive merchandise to cutting-edge tools, we got it all. By purchasing a product, you become a part of our mission to deliver valuable content and take this community to new heights. Every purchase helps us invest in better equipment, expand our team, and explore new possibilities. These products are just things that you own. They are a symbol of your support and love for what we do. So stay tuned for the next video. Check the links below and grab what catches your eyes. Let's embark on this journey together. Thank you for inspiring us. You turn this channel into a community, not just a platform. So let's continue to create.
We still have sad days. You asked why we're here, and one of the reasons that I chose this location to be interviewed is because not only does it represent what our country lost in the lives that were lost here that day, but we still continue to have losses every day. According to the VA, there are 22 lives per day of veterans who use the VA's mental health services that commit suicide. And suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The people that die at their own hands, even with assisted suicides. They're in a sense dying at their own hands. Or, excuse me, I'm watering up here. They're missing things, and the people that are around them, that love them, are missing things. And I coined a phrase not very long ago that for each suicide, the world skips a beat as it tries to find its groove again. And